My name is Patrick Cooney. I'm here with the League of Women Voters for this evening's discussion on the propositions on our November ballot. I want to tell you, before we get to the propositions, I want to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We're just dedicated to voter service, and we, at election time, we happen to go around many locations in the county making presentations on these propositions. And we're sort of culminating our election season presentations with this event involving students from High Tech High School in San Marcos. It's formerly called High Tech High North County, and Valley Center High School, who are joining us for the third time to do this. So I want to welcome these students. I have to think that this is such a embodiment of the League of Women Voters mission, because we, in preparing on these propositions, these students have not only begun to master what is involved with them so that they can present them in a meaningful way to the audience, but they also have developed skills that hopefully, and I'm sure, will last them through a lifetime of voting, because they, unlike me, have many, many years of voting ahead of them. So with that in mind, I do want to mention a couple of things that the League of Women Voters puts out at election time, which are extremely important. One is called Smart Voter, and this is a website that you can go to and immediately obtain all kinds of information, not just on the propositions and the major candidates, but all the people that are running for judges, for boards, for all kinds of minor offices that you would not otherwise, that don't receive much publicity. And it's a wonderful source to get information about these candidates. It has biographical information on all of them and links to their websites. And especially if you're voting by mail, which is what I would recommend, then it's very handy to just be by the computer and use Smart Voter as you prepare your ballot. And then secondly, on these propositions, we do every election season produce a very handy publication, written in very easy to read language, which summarizes these propositions. It's called Easy Voter. It's probably available at your local library. It's, I believe, at the Escondido Library. If it is not, you can also get it online. It's called Easy Voter. With that, I would like to turn it over to our student moderators and move on to the first proposition. The moderators are from High Tech High. Their names are Connor Gressett and Alice Koski. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Connor, and he's going to tell you a little bit about Proposition 30.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Connor Gressett. I'm followed by my co-host.
My name is Alice Koski, and we welcome you to this night where we learn about some propositions, and we're joined by some expert panelists representing both yes and no.
Now this evening we are only having debates from students on propositions that have opposition. So that means that we will only be covering the propositions that have a serious opposition from one party or another. Now the first thing we're going to talk about this evening is Proposition 30. Now Proposition 30 proposes tax increases on those who earn over $250,000 for 7 years. Now this represents 5/6 of the amount of taxation that would be increased. The other 1/6 is a sales tax increase by 1/4 of a cent for 4 years. Now, today to join us, we have 3 students from the no side of the proposition, which are Elliot Greb, Alexa Lane, and Emily Sanders. Representing our yes side from High Tech High North County are Francis Liberian and Ellen Hendricks. And the 3 that I mentioned before are from Valley Center. Now, Alice has a question to start off our debate.
We're going to go ahead and start with the no side, and we're asking you, can you explain to us why the public should be voting no on Prop 38?
The public should vote no on Prop 30 because there's no guarantee on where the funds are from the proposition, where they're going to. They're going to the general fund, but the allocation of the resources is not specified, so we don't know for sure if they're actually going to educational purposes. We also have the highest income tax in the United States, and this raises it even more by 1/4 cent of a tax. And raising taxes on job creators kills jobs. If job creators are being taxed more heavily, then they won't be able to have the resources to pay for employees and to increase their businesses, and so you should vote no.
All right, can our experts on yes on 30 give a rebuttal to that?
All right, so as Connor said, Proposition 30 is a temporary tax increase on income tax for those who make over $250,000 a year for 7 years. That will be implemented for 7 years. The sales tax increase will be 1/4% more than it is currently, and that will be implemented for 4 years. The money can be used for smaller class sizes, more recent textbooks, and rehiring teachers that have been fired in the past budget cuts. These funds cannot be touched by any other section of the budget because they are protected specifically by the Constitution. Couples earning below $500,000 a year will not be paying any more income tax than they already are. And if this is not approved, $6 billion will be cut from the budget for education. So vote yes.
All right, now we'll move on to the yes side. Can you please give us a little bit more information, convince us all as to why, yes, we should be voting yes?
Now, the opposition can put up a lot of arguments, but the fact of the matter is, our schools, as they are now, with their funds, cannot put up a competitive education for our kids. Now, when Prop 30 goes into effect, into our general budget will be added an education protection fund where most of these increased tax revenues will end up. The money from this fund will be allocated directly to individual school districts who will then decide through community meetings where the money is needed exactly. Now, this money will be protected through audits, and also every single cent and dollar paid with this money will be put up on the web for the public to access. So all this money is transparent, and we will know that it will go straight to our children.
Thank you very much. What would your arguments be to that?
Well, I would just like to quote you when you said that no one making underneath $500,000 a year will see a rise in their income tax. Now, if you actually look at the bill, anyone earning under $500,000 up to, well, let's see here, anyone from making from $250,000 a year to $300,000 a year will see a rise of 1% in income tax. $300,000 a year to $500,000 a year, or $500,000 a year will see a rise of 2%, which is a 22% rise in their income tax. And $500,000 to $1 million will be a 3% increase. Now, also, Proposition 30 increases their sales tax by 1/4%. That affects everyone. Every time you make a purchase, they're taking more money out of your pocket, and that's going to, in an economy like this, people need to be keeping the money they have to spend on things they need, such as food, items like this, and not, I believe Alexa would like to comment on the general fund.
Okay, can we get your opinion on that?
The money actually is not guaranteed to go specifically to education. It's actually very vague on that matter. It doesn't even specify an exact amount. It actually does, however, guarantee that money will go to public safety. And by public safety, it means like police officers and the parolees. And then the rest of that money will go to the general funds. And so in the bill, in fact, it does not guarantee that money will go directly to education. It may go, but it's not specified that it will go there directly.
Thank you very much. Really quickly, we're going to go, we'll give a brief description over Prop 38. And Prop 30 and Prop 38 are extremely similar. There's a few differences. In Prop 38, you're not looking at a tax on any sales tax. You're only looking at an increase on income tax on a sliding scale, and that's for 12 years. And another difference is that the revenues from Prop 38 will only be going to K through 12 schools and early child development versus, so it'll be excluding college. And also the revenue can only go to school programs. This money can't be in hiring teachers or increasing salaries for teachers.
Thank you very much, Alice. Now we're going to move to Pat Cooney to give us an excellent description of Proposition 31.
Well, thank you, Connor. I should point out that Prop 31 is sort of associated with what was just talked about and when they were talking about Prop 30. The reason Prop 30 is on the ballot and Prop 38 is on the ballot is because there was a anticipated shortfall in the state budget. And the reason that there's an anticipated shortfall is because the California state budget, unlike the federal budget, has to be balanced, and it is totally dependent on tax revenues, which in turn are dependent on the state of the economy. So if the economy is doing very well in California, like it was doing in the late 90s, then there's plenty of revenue that far exceeds what was anticipated. And what happened in the late 90s is that they actually cut taxes. Now, what has happened in recent years is we've been in a prolonged recession. Revenues continue to fall short of projections. And so the solution this year was a proposal by Governor Brown, which resulted in Proposition 30, to make up some of that shortfall with a tax increase. I should point out that the voters have to pass a tax increase because under the terms of Proposition 13, it requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature to pass any new taxes. It doesn't require them, they don't need 2/3 to reduce taxes, but they do need 2/3 to increase taxes. So as a result, as a practical matter, that can't happen, and so it goes to the voters to decide, and that's what you're being asked to decide on both Proposition 30 and 38. And Proposition 31 actually goes to the process in which the budget is formulated and worked on, and it is, I might say at the outset, it is an extreme challenge to California voters to make a decision about the wisdom of these proposals, because you really almost have to be a legislator or close to the legislative process to know whether some of these reforms that this organization called California Forward set forward to reform and make the budget process, in their view, cleaner. So I'm just going to summarize some of those and some of the proposals, because they are multi-proposals and they are different. And then I'm going to suggest to the voters that you carefully try to understand them, and if you need some guidance, and I certainly do, then look to the groups that are for and against this proposition. And I should remind voters that you don't have to, when you vote, it's not like a multiple choice test in school. You don't have to vote on each and every little thing. Like when you take your SAT test, you better guess on everything, but on a voter's ballot, you don't have to do that. So you don't have to vote on all these measures, and this is indeed a very complicated measure. It calls for a 2-year budget cycle. Right now, we do a budget every year. Under this proposal, we'll be doing budgets every 2 years instead of 1 year. It requires that if there is going to be any program that is voted in by the legislature, a new program, that's going to cost $25 million or more, and $25 million is not a lot in state budget parlance, then there has to be an identified source of revenue to fund that, or which is basically going to be a tax that the voters have passed, or it's going to have to be funded through an identified cut in some other program. Then I was talking about how we have this problem in California. When we're in a recession, we don't get the revenues we anticipate, and costs have to be cut. That has led to huge stalemates and delays in passing the budget in recent years. This proposition suggests, let's give the governor full authority to make his own cuts in order to balance the budget, and if the legislature doesn't approve of those emergency cuts that the governor has made, then they have a certain period of time to override them. There are some provisions in this proposed legislation to deal with transfer of authority to local governments. There's a requirement that all legislation be available for public review 3 days prior to the vote on it, and that's so they can't sneak in some last-minute provision without public examination. And finally, it calls for performance reviews of all state agencies. That summarizes Prop 31, and I'm now going to turn it over to Alice Koski, who's going to moderate the discussion on Proposition 32.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney, for that description of Prop 31. At this point, we'll have our 32 introduce themselves as well as our 32 no's.
I'm Paige Helms. And do I start?
From Valley Center High,
Oh,
right?
from Valley Center High School.
And I'm CJ Gittleson, also from Valley Center High School.
I'm Benjamin Dalrymple from High Tech High, North County.
I'm Maria Bravo from High Tech High North County.
Thank you very much. Prop 32 is focusing on our unions, and specifically we're looking at, if this passes, a ban on the unions using the money they get from payroll deductions to support political sides or political candidates. And this also applies to payroll deductions from corporations and government contractors. And the point of this would be to have equal representation for all of the people in the unions so that a union can't go out and support someone representing everyone in that union. And at this point, we'll have the yeses on 32 describe why the public needs to vote yes.
The first reason that the public should vote yes on Prop 32 is that Prop 32 will prohibit corporations and unions from donating to candidates with funds that the teachers didn't express in writing or otherwise that they would like donated. So really what this comes down to is that the teachers need to be able to have their own say in where their money is going. This is important because unions can still donate in federal elections, so they aren't silenced completely. So this bill is actually a happy medium between the extreme of not letting them donate at all and the extreme of giving them complete say without letting the teachers choose for themselves.
And also, it's not necessarily just teachers, it's anybody in the union that has not consented to who the union is supporting.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we'll have your remarks on that.
Well, as you stated, you can have money taken out of your payroll automatically to support political campaigns. And if Prop 32 passes, you can no longer do this, and you have to go out of your way to actually donate to these political campaigns. And from there, you're no longer known as a part of a union, because it will be taken away with Prop 32. And when you go out and do it on your own, you will then have a limit of $2,000 that you can donate to political campaigns. And the big upper class companies such as super PACs and other large companies will not have limits on how much money they can donate to political campaigns.
Okay, and what would your remarks to that be?
Well, the first thing is that if it states in the general election, the handbook that voters get, that you can, if you express in writing, if the unions can give you that option to donate through them. So it isn't by an individual basis, it's actually, you can go through the union. That's kind of all I have to rebuttal for that.
Okay, and if you two can really just give us reasons why why people should be voting no.
Well, no automatic deductions by corporations, unions, and government of employees' wages to be used for politics, and no contributions by the government contractors to be politicians who control contracts awarded to them, and no more taking checks away from discounting them for the politics.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Prop 33, presented by my co-host Connor.
Well, before we do that, I'd like to ask a question on Prop 32. I have a question for you, Paige. The you indicated that it prohibits contributions for both unions and corporations, is that correct? But am I right in saying that it only applies, this proposition only applies to payroll deductions, both from unions and from corporations, as a way of creating funds, that there are other avenues which individuals that are in unions and employees of corporations and the boards of directors of corporations can contribute for political causes?
Yes, that's correct. Corporations can still donate to a political fund by their own resources. They just can't use the money from payroll deductions, and the same thing with unions. So there won't be any money coming out of the paycheck of the people involved in unions or corporations, but you can still contribute.
Well, as a practical matter, do corporations use payroll deductions as a way to fund political advertising? Or do you know? Does anybody? Do you know? Or
I believe that if they can contribute to funds that that aren't necessarily sponsored by the candidate themselves, but it pretty much has if the companies in sorry, and the unions can't contribute, but they're saying that PACs can. But even though PACs can still contribute, PACs can be regulated, and that differs from just the unions contributing however much they want.
well, maybe I'll change the question and then just ask for assent.
Okay.
As a practical matter, most payroll deduction money right now that's going to political causes comes from union members. Can we agree on that?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm talking about payroll deduction money, which is what this proposition addresses.
I don't want to say that I know for sure that all of or most of the payroll deductions go to political funding, but if I had to wager a guess, I would say that it is a good amount and worth debating.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Connor now, and we will proceed with the Proposition 33.
Thank you very much, both the kids from Valley Center and High Tech High North County. You can take your seats, and if the people supporting Proposition 33 and supporting the negative on the side of Proposition 33 would like to take their seats, that'd be great. So, for Proposition 33, we are dealing with insurance amendments. Now, Proposition 33 allows insurance companies to set prices based on whether or not you held insurance previously. And if you held insurance for a long time, you can keep your discount even if you switch between insurance companies. Furthermore, you would be penalized if you did not previously own insurance underneath this new amendment. Now, the question that I'd like to propose initially to our Proposition 33 affirmative commentators, Maddie Darty and Paige Helms, I would like to ask you a very general question. What do you think is a good reason for someone to vote for Proposition 33 in the November election?
All right, Connor. Well, first of all, probably one of the more important reasons to vote yes on Prop 33 is that Proposition 33 overall offers new consumer protections. It encourages those who don't have car insurance to obtain it. Because Proposition 33 makes it easier to earn continuous coverage, you're more likely to want to get in on this discount. You're more likely to want to insure yourself to protect yourself while you're out driving, protect other people. The longer you're insured, the greater the discount is. Currently, the law does not offer this proportional protection. And overall, Proposition 33 encourages uninsured drivers to become insured, and overall, it makes our roads safer.
Thank you very much. As far as the negative side of Proposition 33, for Eric Sakota and Chandler Hawthorne, would you like to explain to us why 33 is not a positive proposition for the populace of California?
I think the reason that it wouldn't be a good idea is for the people who already don't have it. If they kept raising it up each time, it wouldn't really be fair, especially to like the students or people who use transportation like that. If they don't have a car more often, like if they use the buses or when they go to college, especially, it's gonna be unfair for them and just be a lot easier and smarter. It's just unfair for them.
Thank you very much, Eric. Back to the affirmative, I'd like to ask you, as an individual who has never purchased insurance before, why should I be penalized when I'm going to purchase a new coverage plan?
Well, I think simply put, we are young and we don't have the same driving experiences that adults do. And being a student and being someone who is not always the best driver, I can say that I definitely should have a little bit higher rates to encourage me to be a safe driver and to, over time, have my rates decrease. And again, these higher coverage costs, they go down over time. They're not something that's going to maintain at this price. Eventually, as you show your reliance to the company that you're insured with, and as you show your dedication to being a safe driver, your rates will go down.
Thank you very much. For the affirm or negative on that argument, would you like to provide any rebuttal?
Yes. As far as Proposition 33 is concerned, it's mainly funded by the upper class and the higher middle class, as well as CEOs. The main funder of this Yes on 33 campaign is none other than Mr. George Joseph, which is the founder and CEO of Mercury Insurance Company. Now, I'm not sure about everyone else, but I'm pretty sure that people who run insurance companies do not want to save you a whole lot of money. They mainly want to capitalize on their profits while you capitalize on your losses. Now, Proposition 33 is very, it's beneficial to those who have maintained coverage, but in this economy, the amount of people who are forced to take public transportation, if the economy does eventually get to this return where they are able to afford auto insurance, they will be penalized for interrupting this stream of insurance keeping. So overall, in this point in time, the 33 proposition is not beneficial to this economy.
Thank you very much, Chandler. Do you have any refutations for what Chandler just said?
I do. I would like to point out that in the prop, it actually says that unemployment is not a factor that will contribute to rate hikes. So if you are unemployed or your gap in insurance lasts less than 90 days, you will not be penalized for not having continuous insurance. Also, as far as the economy goes, this proposition will actually increase competition between insurance companies because they'll have to offer you better discounts. As far as switching goes, right now, you're rewarded for staying with the same insurance company longer. Under this proposition, you would be rewarded for finding the cheapest price wherever you can.
Okay, I'd like to propose another question in response to what you said. Given the idea of a more faulty economy, would that necessarily guarantee an increase in the amount of competition between these insurance companies, or would that insurance company competition still be apparent in an economy that was booming, given the fact that this proposition did not pass?
That's kind of a difficult one to answer. I think that this proposition, the increase in competition would help in any economy because competition is really best for the consumer at any point in time. So increased competition can always help the consumer. Yeah.
Thank you. Chandler and Eric, do you have any refutation?
Yes, I have one final refutation. It is stated in this Proposition 33 that there is no fiscal real impact on the whole proposition as a whole, and that it's not much to really benefit anybody as far as the state budget goes. And as far as competition, it's not guaranteed that there will be any competition, that these rates will go down, or that there'll be higher benefits. It's merely suggested that there will be more competition.
Thank you very much. That concludes our discussion on Proposition 33. Thank you very much, Valley Center and High Tech High North County. We're going to move now into Proposition 34, which my co-host Alice is going to address.
Thank you, Connor. As we wait for our experts to join us up here, we'll go over a brief description on the history of the death penalty. Prop 34 is addressing repealing the death penalty more for economic reasons. In our state's history, since 1978, when the death penalty returned to our state, 900 have been put to death row. However, we've only seen 14 executions. 83 other deaths just while they were on death row, and 75 people have had their sentences reduced. So with Prop 33 were, or Prop 34 were to pass, you would see that the death penalty would be repealed and instead be replaced with imprisonment for life and no possible parole. Our state would be looking at savings of $130 million annually, and as this would be passed, you would see $100 million going to law enforcement. And here you can see a map of our country. The red states are showing people who still have the death penalty in their state, and blue who have no current death penalty, and then the ones with the stripes showing it's declared unconstitutional. So we'll move into our discussion now. Looking to the no side, can you explain to us why we should still have the death penalty in California?
Yes, I can. The problem with the death penalty is not that it needs to be removed. It simply needs to be mended. The death penalty is there for a good and liable purpose. It simply is a matter of us streamlining our justice system so that it is not costing the taxpayers or the government more money. I just think that it's kind of coming from someone who has experience where I have a family member who had suffered from something that happened to them in the family, and it was terrible. And I just do not think that anyone should have to deal with the emotional turmoil that comes with something like this. And so you may argue that the death penalty is cruel or unusual, but I would have to argue that is it not cruel and unusual for the families of those people who were hurt or killed? Is it not cruel and unusual for them?
Thank you very much. Our yeses, what do you have to say to that?
Well, I think we can all agree that California is broke with an indication of gas prices rising and college tuition. Now, since the death penalty has been implicated, over $1 billion has been spent on death row appeals that are made one after another by these criminals. Now, since state money is being spent on these court hearings, judges, and attorneys, that money could be spent on education and specifically law enforcement. So, with state money, law enforcement can be able to prevent such crimes from happening or even solve already committed crimes that have gone cold. So not only is this a matter of morals, but a matter of like wasted money. And you did mention about how it's a cruel and unusual punishment. Well, in my opinion, I kind of think that how they are lethally injected, I think it's kind of a swift and just death for them. But when they serve life in prison without possibility of parole, I believe that they, in a way, kind of realize that their life is over, but yet they're still living. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And to the noes, we've hear your moral argument, but in our current economic state in in California, how do you argue the money that we would be saving if the death penalty would be repealed?
Well, I don't quite see where we're going to be saving this money, considering we're going to be taking $100 million over the next 4 years and directing it towards something that we know isn't going to work. So we're going to spend more money, not only with that, but also housing those inmates. It spends $50,000 a year per inmate to house them. For what? Them to realize that their life's over? I don't think we need a amendment. I think we need an express lane.
Thank you very much for that. And our yeses, what would you say to the question of the economic gain that we would see with the repeal of the death penalty?
Well, sorry. So if the death penalty is repealed, that money, basically, like when criminals make an appeal, like that money is being spent, and they don't have a limit to it, so they can appeal as many times as they want. And by abolishing the death penalty, they won't have that ability to appeal over and over again, and therefore that money could be spent otherwise. So I think that Prop 34 proposes a justice system that would work.
Okay, thank you. Layla, would you like to speak with the remaining time?
Also, there are 900 people on death row right now, and of those 900 people so far since 1978, there have been 14 executions. And yes, these people are on life sentences with no parole already. So the idea of putting these people to death when there's obviously something already wrong with the system is, to me, a waste of time. These people are constantly using state money to have state lawyers appeal to have their sentences reduced from death row. If they're not being executed right now on death row, they should be just serving life sentences, and therefore there is no need to have a death penalty if there are no executions happening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cooney, would you like to give your input on this?
Well, I'd just like to ask a question of those that are opposed to this proposition. You asked for an express lane, but it's become clear with the advancement of technology and DNA evidence that around the country, several of the individuals who have been condemned to death some of whom were executed before the DNA exculpated them, but a whole number of them have been exculpated by DNA evidence. So obviously there are times where our criminal justice system doesn't arrive at the right result. How do you square that with your view on continuation of the death penalty?
You know, you're right, there are innocent people sitting on death row, but the ones I want to target, I think, are the ones that are confessed killers. Why are we wasting our money on them? They have, in my opinion, no reason to be here. So I think that, yes, the ones that aren't confessed and that retain their innocence should be given more of an opportunity, but not let off the hook.
And also, as Sean said, they're the ones that are the confessed killers. They need to be dealt with. And as also what he said, $50,000 a year is quite expensive for room, board, food, and so yeah, that's a lot of money, especially, I mean, they can live years in prison. That alone will exceed the cost of putting the ones that have been confessed and actually found guilty based on DNA evidence. They should be dealt with.
But you're matching that against what us lawyers make doing these appeals, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on to Proposition 36. And Connor.
Thank you very much, both the High Tech High North County and the Valley Center kids. It was an excellent argument. So we're going to move on to Proposition 36. If the Valley Center and High Tech High North County kids would like to take the stage, that'd be great. So this proposition deals with amending the three strikes law. Now, under this amendment, you cannot be sentenced for 25 to life if your third strike is a non-serious or non-violent crime. Instead, you take what the sentencing would have been before the three strikes law and double the sentence. Now, if any of your previous two strikes were serious or violent, you are not eligible for the reduction in sentencing. The state would be saving $70 to $90 million. And then this goes back to the original intent of the three strikes law by focusing on the importance of keeping criminals off of our streets. Now, the first question that I would like to propose I would like to introduce the people that will be supporting this and the people that will be providing the negative side. So for those on the affirmative side, we have Autumn Schultz and Jake Reedon. And then for our negative side, we have Tyler Alexander and Tanner McNary. Now, the first question that I'd like to propose is for the affirmative side. Now, what positive things can you see for the passing of Proposition 36, and why should American voters consider supporting it?
Well, like you said, this proposition will restore the original intent of the third strike law by focusing on violent criminals. We don't want to put the nonviolent criminals who don't deserve life in prison where they can get raped or murdered, and I just don't think we should wish that upon anybody.
Thank you. Pardon. Thank you. For the negative side, would you like to refute what he said and possibly provide some information as to why you don't believe that the reform to the three strikes law should be passed?
Yeah. All right, so a one-time cost is not really a one-time cost because with this, criminals can be going to resentencing multiple times. If they are a habitual offender, that means they're most likely to have more of a fourth or fifth or sixth offense in the area that they had committed the crime in, which would cause more
resentencings, which would have more money going into the cost of district attorneys, the public defenders, and the county sheriff's office that would be housing these criminals during these trials. And we should be keeping it tough on criminals and keep crime down like it has been since the mid-90s.
Thank you very much. Would the affirmative side like to refute the negative side's remarks?
Yeah. The thing is, the court would still require evidence to show that the inmate isn't dangerous and that they pose no threat to society. So if the offender has committed certain crimes that pose a threat to society, they are not eligible to be released back into society. And this proposition saves $70 million starting off. That is keeping us from having them in jail for life. The housing, the food, the medicine, all of that is lessened by looking at the cases.
Thank you very much. I'd like to offer you time to refute that argument.
Yeah, the sheriff, the law enforcement of California has spent millions of dollars over the past 10 and 20 years putting these convicts behind bars. Crime has been in constant decline. That's every single year since 3 strikes went into effect. Crime has gone down from the previous. We are now 32% less than what crime was like when 3 strikes went in the mid-90s. And what we're talking about here is we're not talking about petty criminals that are put in with dangerous criminals. We're talking about felons. Felon is the highest level of possible crime. And if you have a felony not once, twice, but 3 times, there's no logical solution other than to be put behind bars. And living in California is a privilege. It's not a right. And so we don't feel like we should just let any person walk the streets of California. You have to earn it. And when you've shown that 3 times you've been managed to be not only convicted felony, but get caught and arrested and sentenced, you don't deserve that right anymore. You've lost your privilege to live in California. And then all right, so that's all.
I'd like to propose one more question to the negative side and then offer to the positive side, to the negative side, and then offer time to the positive side to refute both of the arguments that they've just made. The question that I have for you is, how can you account for individuals who have drug-related charges or more minor theft charges that are imprisoned with people who may be murderers or seriously sadistic individuals?
Like I said, there's a difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. We're not talking about 3 misdemeanors as 25 to life. We're talking about 3 felonies. So yes, there's drug cases that are felonies, but they're with serious narcotics like heroin or cocaine. They're not like marijuana. Would not be possession of marijuana would not be grounds for the 3rd strike of 25 to life. Or you're talking about theft. We're not talking about petty theft. We're talking about theft with large sum values of merchandise or armed robbery. So we're not talking about like small things. We're talking about big crimes, even if they're not violent.
Thank you, Tyler. Now I'd like to offer you time to refute both of his arguments in regards to people who have maybe committed crimes less serious, as well as to respond to the argument regarding the opinions about
drugs or theft?
No, previous to that.
That was all.
The last argument that he made to the effect... Well, we'll start with that. I'm sorry.
You say that no small criminals that have committed small crimes have been incarcerated for life. But if you commit a crime like if you even attempt robbery, you get a strike as a felony. And there are plenty of examples of people who have been incarcerated for life for stealing a piece of pizza or trying to get food because they're homeless. In 1995, when the 3 strikes law was first introduced, a man, after having 2 strikes, 2 for attempted robbery, was arrested and incarcerated 25 to life for stealing a piece of pizza. If that's not petty, I don't know what is.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have to end the argument in regards to Proposition 36, but thank you very much. Both students from Valley Center and High North County provided some very excellent insights into our proposition. Next, we're going to move on to Proposition 37.
Thank you, Connor. Prop 37, we're here to discuss our last debate tonight, and that will be about the labeling of genetically modified products. If Prop 37 were to pass, you will see all products that have been genetically modified through animals or plants will need to have a label on them to warn the public. And this exempts alcohol, animal feed, organic, or ready-to-eat food. And you're stopping companies from marketing genetically modified or processed food as natural. So preventing companies that might be falsely labeling their products as natural, that will no longer be able to happen. So the no's on Prop 37, could you please give us an overview of your argument?
Yes. If Proposition 37 passes, it will not be simplifying the problem by putting a label or a ban in genetically altered food. In reality, it will be pressuring food businesses to use more expensive ingredients in their products, which will hurt low-income families that are just trying to get food on the table. It will also create a disadvantage to farmers in the state of California, because California will be the first state that will be regulating this kind of regulation on food. And all the farmers are trying to do is that they're scaring away pests and keeping their crops clean and nutritious. All that, if Proposition 37 is passed, the only thing that it will do is terrify customers, and it will result in job loss for food businesses as well as farmers.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. And on the no side, we have representing Sean Hoff and CJ Gittleson. So would either one of you like to give us why this should pass?
Yes, this should pass because we have a right to know what's in our foods, whether or not it's been genetically engineered or not. I mean, I know my mom will not buy something that's been genetically engineered because she believes it's not good for me. So she deserves to know whether or not something has been genetically engineered and has not been falsely labeled as natural, like such as a genetically engineered pig, for example. I mean, who knows? That's just an example. But they could consider that a natural ingredient because it's a living thing, so they consider it natural, but in all reality it has been genetically engineered. And so this is protecting your family's, like the right that you're that you know you're feeding your family. And that's pretty much it. Do you have anything to add? Yeah.
Thank you, CJ. Ashley, what would your points be to this?
Voting on Prop 37 will not be simplifying the problem of wanting to know what's in our food. And these labels will scare people because it will cause confusion, and the message will then be presented in a misleading manner. Therefore, they might not even purchase foods with that kind of label. And you did say that your mom thinks that genetically engineered food is bad for you. First of all, this process or method has been going on for decades, and it protects foods from pests and has improved nutritional qualities in our food. And in fact, there's no evidence that GE techniques have greater risks than traditional methods. And on that note, the FDA and World Health Organization will actually would have seen if there was something wrong with these types of foods. And they actually work with GE developers to make sure that their foods are safe to consume.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Do you have any points to add to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry to undercut your entire argument, but then if they're so safe, why would it scare the consumer? The labels.
And also, you in your argument, you were saying that they're protecting the crops. That's not genetically engineered food. That's pesticides, which are already labeled.
Would you like to answer the question?
Well, basically, putting a label on it, I think, is not going to do any good for the product. I mean, first of all, like this will raise money with trying to like already have farmers like put this kind of label on their food. And therefore people will probably not get the message, which will then affect the economy because people aren't going to want to be buying these products and will affect businesses, and therefore the food will just be banned in general.
And Mr. Cooney.
Yes, did any of you, when you did your research, determine whether there are places that do have this kind of labeling requirement?
Yes, many countries in Europe already have this requirement. 61 countries in Europe already have this requirement.
So if they can do it, is there a good reason we shouldn't be doing it? What do you think?
Well, it will. Well, our economy is already failing, so putting these labels on the foods, like I said before, it will pressure businesses to use more expensive ingredients, and it's already a bad economy, so it will hurt low-income families and even like middle-class
It'll
families.
significantly increase food prices like they're claiming.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
Okay. Well, moving on, we're now going to end our debate portion, but we're going to have a presentation on Proposition 35, which imposes higher penalties on human trafficking. And present to tell us about that proposition is High Tech High student Janet Amador. Welcome, Janet, and let's hear about this proposition. Do we need stronger penalties on human trafficking?
Well, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what the current law is and how Prop 35 will be changing this law. So as of now, the prison sentencing for labor trafficking is 5 years, and with Proposition 35, it will increase to 12 years. As for sex trafficking of an adult with force, is currently 5 years and will increase to 20 years with Proposition 35. As of sex trafficking of a minor without force is currently not viewed as human trafficking with our current law. But with the change of Proposition 35, the sentencing will be 12 years. As of sex trafficking of a minor with force, it is currently 8 years, and with Proposition 35, it will change to a life term. As for sentence enhancement, great bodily injury is 6 years additional to whatever their prison sentence is, and with Proposition 35, it will increase to 10 years. As for prior human trafficking offense, there's currently no sentence enhancement, but with Proposition 35, there will be a 5-year increase for each prior conviction. As for fines, there's currently only a $100,000 fine for sex trafficking of a minor, but not for anything else. And so with Proposition 35, the convicts will have to pay up to $1.5 million for all human trafficking offenses. So a yes on proposition would be longer prison sentences and larger fines. The 70% of the money that will be collected due to the fines will be used to help victims of sex trafficking or labor trafficking. And people who are in favor of 35 will, it implies that all sex traffickers would have to release any online identities and will have to be monitored on their online use. Let's see. And so pretty much they're in favor of protecting your children of online predators. Those that are against Prop 35 state because of the federal overlap, the state law is going to change to how the federal law is. And so in cases such as human trafficking, it is usually overruled by federal law. And these $2 million that will be used for court proceedings or imprisonment could be used for something else due to the fact that we are in a very poor economy. And currently there's only 18 convicts for human trafficking in state penitentiary. Another reason why people are against Proposition 35 is because parents, children, roommates, domestic partners, and landlords of prostitutes will have to, they would have to register as sex offenders.
Thank you very much, Janet. That was an excellent presentation. I want to move very quickly, because we're a little short on time, on Proposition 39, just to explain it. Proposition 39 deals with multi-state taxation, and it involves a proposed change in the way these multi-state businesses are taxed. Some time ago, California, along with many other states, went to a four-method test or four-method way of calculating the taxes of interstate corporations. And what that really meant was that most corporations that had a lot of plant and employees in a state other than California got a huge break on their taxes. This proposition wants to tax them only on their sales, and it proposes to increase revenues to California by $1 billion, which is a significant amount of money. The opponents basically say that it will cost California jobs, it will hurt the economy, because it will make it less desirable for multi-state corporations to do business in California. And now turning to Proposition 40, I have Madison Doherty from Valley Center High, and she's going to tell us that there really isn't a controversy here, is there?
No, there actually is not. Proposition 40 addresses the possible redistricting of the California State Senate districts. A yes vote on this proposition approves, and a no vote rejects new state Senate districts drawn by the Citizens Redistricting Commission. If this proposition does not pass, officials supervised by the California Supreme Court will adjust the districts. This proposition is being voted on to prevent gerrymandering or the process of manipulating geographic boundaries in favor of one political candidate or another. A yes vote on 40 would protect the state Senate maps drawn by a voter-approved Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. This upholds the will of California voters to hold politicians accountable by keeping them out of the redistricting process. However, the no on this proposition campaign has actually been dropped because their intentions to overturn the Commission state Senate districts for 2012, that's what they had intended for, and unfortunately that wasn't going to happen. So they completely dropped their campaign altogether. So the only campaign going right now for Proposition 40 is the yes vote. However, you may vote whichever way you choose.
Yeah, but the one thing to remember, would you agree, is that unlike all the other propositions where a no vote is a rejection of a new proposal, a no vote on this basically rejects the status quo.
Yes, exactly.
So in order to keep what is in place now, it requires a yes vote. Is
Yes,
that
with a
correct?
yes vote, you will keep things the way that they are. The districts will stay the same. Actually, with a yes vote, there will be no fiscal impact on the government locally or at the state level. With a no vote, there will be a $500,000 one-time cost to establish new state Senate districts, and then there will be a one-time $500,000 cost to redo the local districts. So with a no vote, you're also looking at incurring a one-time $1 million cost. So.
Well, thank you very much for your information on that, Madison. And let me just thank all the students of High Tech High and Valley Center who worked so hard to prepare for this event, and a special thank you to the two teachers who helped make this happen. That's Tina Chavez from High Tech High and Ron Ventimiglia from Valley Center High. Thanks again. I hope we were able to give you, the Escondido voters, a little bit more insight into these propositions, and we'll see you next election season. Good night.